Good morning, everybody. My name is Mitch West, and I am the Regional Director for Nexstar Media Group. We are the largest media group in the country with 116 markets and 197 television stations from Hartford to Honolulu, Hawaii. Yes, there are jobs in Honolulu, Hawaii in news. I want to share with you today what I am calling the 10 keys of the kingdom. And I hope that this time will be fruitful for you and entertaining for you, and also an education on some of the mistakes that I have made in my career. I wish somebody had sat me down and had this conversation with me as I was finishing college and starting my professional career. But before we go there, I just want to share a little bit about myself. I was conceived a Yankee in New York City, but was born a Texan. My parents moved to Texas when my mom was about 8 months pregnant with me. So I got here just in time. If you're from Texas, you know exactly what I mean. I grew up in a large family. I had 6 brothers and sisters. We all were MJW or MMW were our initials, and my mom and dad were Charles and Christine. Now, Charlie and Christine were very unique. If you remember the show Seinfeld, my father is a cross between General George S. Patton from World War II, Archie Bunker from a show called All in the Family in the 70s, and Mr. Costanza. And my mother is basically Mrs. Costanza. So you roll those two characters together, you can imagine what our house was like. My father was former military, and at the age of 18, I was drafted into the United States Army. And you're probably saying, well, when did the draft go away? In the 70s, right? Nobody told my dad. So I joined the Army, and I served with the 82nd Airborne Division. A couple of pictures of me on screen, a much younger Mitch. And I had the privilege of being a broadcast journalist. So think Good Morning Vietnam. The 46 Romeo was my job title, and it really launched my career in television. By the way, I work behind the camera more than in front of the camera because I have a face for radio. So I leave the Army, and I'm getting ready to start my college experience. And I had the privilege of having an RA by the name of Mike Milford. You probably know him as Dr. Milford there at Auburn University. So I have this very close connection. And I do have some very embarrassing pictures that I will use for ransom someday if I ever need to. So a big shout out to Mike if he happens to be with us or gets a hold of this recording in any shape or form. And a big thank you to Addie and Jennifer for inviting me today. So with that, I want to jump into the first tip, and that is never judge a book by its cover. And I want to tell you the story of Kelly Anderson and Comcast Cable. Kelly is one of the most extraordinary women because she's willing to take a chance on people. So I'll take you back to 2001. I walk in to drop off my resume, and I'm quickly told, well, we'll review it, but you're probably not a candidate we're going to be interested in, because I worked in television but didn't have television sales experience, and I would be selling advertisement on the cable networks like Lifetime and ESPN and so on. And so sure enough, she called me 2 days later and said, listen, you've got some sales experience and you have some TV experience, but we're looking for somebody with TV and sales experience. And I stopped her and I said, are you looking for a closer? Are you looking for someone to increase revenue and create new revenue streams for your company? And I think I shocked her because she said, let me call you back in a minute. 10 minutes later, she called me back and says, come tomorrow morning at 8:30. If you're even 1 minute late, just don't come up the elevator. Well, I got there at 7, waited until the doors opened, sat in the lobby at 8:30 in the morning, and she had me sit there until almost 10:30, coming out, checking to see if I was still there. It was all a test to see if I was going to stick this out. I walked back to her office, and within 15 minutes, she says, let me stop you right there. And I thought, oh, great, the interview's over. She goes, I need to go get someone. And I'm thinking, please tell me that's not security she's getting. So she walks down the hallway and comes back with the general manager and the general sales manager of the division. And he comes in and they said, we wanted to know if you were the real deal because she was reluctant but yet excited to meet you. And we're going to give you the opportunity. So the lesson learned here is it's not necessarily about everything that's on your resume or your experience. Can you connect the dots in your life, and can those employers connect the dots to the job that you're looking for? And by the way, figure out if that job is even a real fit for you. One of the first things that that usually is asked of me by employers that want to hire me is, so tell me about, what are you making now? What I learned in that job is that he who talks salary first loses. I stepped into that job, leaving a television job at $55,000. I thought, well, I'll give myself a $10,000 raise. So we'll say $65,000. And sure enough, I gave them my $65,000. They came back and we're going to give you $70,000. I'm like, oh my goodness, I am a great negotiator. A $15,000 raise. Turned out that position was paying $85,000. So they got me cheap. So when they start asking you questions about salary, simply use a statement like this. You know, I'm sure this is a great organization, and I'm sure you take care of good people. And as we get time, we get to that point where we start talking about compensation, we can have a further discussion. But right now, this is a dance. Let's get to know each other and smile and deflect. Sometimes they'll take that as an answer. Sometimes that will be a gatekeeper question. So use that sparingly, but it's always worked for me after that first mistake. And by the way, you need to be your own best advocate. You're the one who's going to tell your story better than anyone. So don't be afraid to blow your trumpet. Second, fall forward. You will fail. You will fail often, but learn from those mistakes. I want to share with you a very difficult experience in my career. It was after I left Fox Network. I'd been with Fox Network, helped them launch their digital operations in Texas, worked for them for 6 years, and really had a successful run. And I was poached away by a huge other competitor, a national broadcaster. And in the first 2 years I was there, I thought I was doing an amazing job until the end of my second year and my review. And I was told in that meeting that my services were no longer rendered. I had a 3-year contract, and they said, today we're going to pay you out the end of your contract. And my whole life was devastated in that moment because a couple of things had happened. First of all, I started believing my own press, which is always dangerous. And I'm going to be very vulnerable with you. I make mistakes, and I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. But the goal here is to learn from the mistakes. But it's also responsibility of the employers that are hiring you to keep you accountable to your job and your performance. And it's your responsibility to check in with those leaders and say, how am I doing? It's okay to get a progress report, to make sure that you are doing the best job you possibly can with the tools and assets that you're given and the resources that are provided to you. So make sure that there is a balance between you and your manager, that you're checking in with them, and that they're giving you positive and realistic feedback. But that was a positive lesson to learn. The other thing that I learned in that experience is that I did not, at that point, I had made my career my life. And when someone takes what you call your life away from you, it really makes you question everything else in your life. So have a balance in your life. My work is a passion for me, but I have to put that passion on the shelf when it's time to spend time with my husband and my family and my friends. And I try to have a good work-life balance. And your generation, by the way, is paving the way for this new idea of a work-life balance. We've said it for years in our careers, but now your generation is forcing these companies to provide that. So bravo to you, because it's much needed, and it will help with the mental health of individuals if they don't put all of their hopes and dreams into the job that pays them. So that is a valuable and painful lesson that I hope that you will never have to endure by using some of these tips. Well, because I could not find a job in Dallas, Texas, I had to ask for a job 15 hours and 4 states away in Savannah, Georgia. But I learned a very valuable lesson, and that's to grow where you were planted. I had to start over. I had gone from the 5th largest market with a major network to going to the 91st market with an NBC affiliate there, and it was the best thing that could have ever happened. I met some of the most amazing women like Liz and Deb, Webb, and so many others that, Margaret Steiner, that really had an impact on my life, because they were these older women who took me under their wing, and they all became my mother. And I asked them when I interviewed, and this was a humbling moment for me, because I had a manager, Sarah Fulmer. I'll never forget the advice she gave me. She says, "You're one of the smartest people I know, but don't remind people. Let them figure it out for themselves." So in conversations, when you talk about your success, use we rather than I, and mean it. It's not just replacing the word, but actually knowing and giving credit where credit is due. So when I interviewed with that station, the first thing the AE asked me, our account executive asked me, is, "What do you expect of me?" I said, "I don't think you understand. You're interviewing me. What do you need out of your manager?" And that was the beginning of me learning how to be a good manager and a good leader again. Learning from my deficits. See, when I left that other organization, I was mad and I thought they were at fault. But I had realized over time that it was my mistakes, and I had to own those and rise above them and try to be the best version of myself. And I had to grow where I was planted. Savannah, Georgia is a beautiful place, but it was so far from home and away from everyone, but it was the only place that would offer me a job. A woman by the name of Deb Thompson, who had hired me 10 years prior to 2014, had offered me a job to help me rebuild my career, because she too had seen a similar situation happen to her. And so thank God for second chances and for growing exactly where you are. Savannah is a beautiful place, so I never really had to worry about the weather, but just keep in mind, you need to bring your own weather with you. Your attitude can inspire others. It can also discourage others. So keep that in mind as you are talking with colleagues and friends, that knowing that your attitude can change. And by the way, regardless of where you are in your life and your position, just know that someone's always watching you. And sometimes they'll call you on it if you make mistakes. And sometimes they'll come to you in these most unexpected moments and said, "Thank you for inspiring me to do my best." And so just know that your attitude will determine your altitude. I know that's an old adage, but it is so true. And you bring your own weather forecast. So regardless if you're in Metula, Mississippi, or in Des Moines, Iowa, or somewhere in the Dakotas, you can bring your own weather and your own good attitude to any situation. The next is one of my favorites, and that is to have a mentor. A man by the name of Jerry Hendricks, when I stepped foot onto Hardin-Simmons University, took me under his wing. And he asked me a question that had never been asked before. He said, "Mitch, what are your dreams?" And I'll never forget that moment at an IHOP in Abilene, Texas. He was very cheap. But I'll never forget the moment that he said that, because for the first time, someone asked me what my dreams and ambitions were. Nobody cared to ask or wanted to ask, but he wanted to invest in me and my success. And Jerry Hendricks, to this day, has been on my trajectory and my path to success all along. We still speak every other week. We still laugh. We still joke. He still holds me accountable, and he reminds me of who I was in 1999 when I graduated from college. And so not only should you have a mentor, but you should be a mentor. You are in a great place in your life where you can invest in others. Yes, even while you're in college. Reach back to some of those students that you know that are still in high school, those freshmen and sophomores who are now juniors and seniors. Reach back out to them. Share with them your life experiences. Tell them as they're getting ready to start school for themselves what that first year was like, how you have to transition into this new world where you really are kind of independent in many ways. And as you progress in your career, always be looking for ways to mentor other people as you are being a mentor. And I always like to use the image of having a hand lifted up and a hand lifting down. So you're pulling up to the next level and you're bringing the next person behind you. Imagine the world we would have if a world had more mentors. So I encourage you to be a mentor. The next is exercise every day. Even if it's just a walk around the block, clear your head and find new inspiration. And you know what? This very talk today began on a walk. When COVID-19 hit and I was stuck at home working, as many people were, we have a decent-sized house. It's a moderate-sized house, but it's only so big. So every day I started getting out and walking. Well, now it's become part of my everyday life, and I try to get my 10,000 steps in every day, whether it's on the treadmill when it's cold and rainy, or out on the Katy Trail here in Dallas, or just around the block. But get out, get some exercise. You'll feel better. You'll mentally feel more in line with success. But even more so, it really gives you a chance to kind of walk through some of the challenges. Many times I was able to solve problems just simply by talking that in my head as I walked down the street. So make sure that you are doing that. The next, and you're probably not even going to recognize this character, is don't invest in people that don't invest in you. The character on the left is Alfred E. Newman. If you don't know who that is, he is the cover boy for Mad magazine, which would later on become a TV series on Fox called Mad TV. And unfortunately, I looked very much like him. And so I was jokingly called Alfred E. Newman. So when I was 10 years old, we went on a field trip to the CBS affiliate here in Dallas, KDFW, with Clarice Tensley and Chip Moody. And I got a tour of the facilities, and I got to meet Clarice Tensley, and she was so gracious to give us all autographed pictures of herself. And it was an amazing experience because it was a turning point in my life. I decided at 10 years old that I wanted to work in television. I wanted to be in front of that camera or work behind the camera to put the magic of what news and journalism could be. But for a poor kid from DeSoto, Texas, that was a long journey and something that seemed impossible. And often people would say, why don't you stick to what you know? Why don't you just go join the Army and don't worry about college. College isn't for everyone. By the way, my favorite movie of all time is Rudy. I watch it at least twice or 3 times a year, and I cry every time that he gets accepted into college and when he's carried off that field. I'm getting emotional now just thinking about it. But I felt a lot like Rudy, and I connected with Rudy because it came out in 1993 when I was in the Army. And it was one of the first films my father and I, for many of the years of my life, had an estranged relationship. But we bonded over that movie. And he says it's the triumph of human spirit. And when everyone else says no, you say yes to yourself. And I believed in that dream as a 10-year-old. And so make sure you don't invest in people who can't invest in your dream, because it's easier for them to pull you down. Think about pulling somebody off a chair. It's hard to pull them up onto a chair, but it's easy to pull them down. So don't surround yourself with people that are not going to believe in your dreams. But you should surround yourself with people that inspire and challenge you. These people are the ones who are going to keep you honest. They're going to speak truth to power, your power or lack of. But they're also going to be that realist, not necessarily a pessimist, a realist. And there is a young man I want to show a picture of. This is my husband. We have been married this year in January. We celebrated 20 years. He was 19 and I was 26 when we met. And he is my best friend. He is my closest advisor. He is the one that I lean on whenever I need to vent or get his opinion. He becomes that sounding board. And in my strength, I fulfill his weakness. And in my weakness, he becomes my strength. Find that great person that can be in your life. It doesn't necessarily have to be your significant other. It can be a best friend. There are a lot of people that are that in my life. A man by the name of Ron Corning, Emmy Award-winning journalist, of my friend Julia McDonald, who worked in the television industry for 20 years and then now has successfully opened her own ad agency. And we encourage each other. We fight for each other, but we also are honest with each other. And those are the kind of people that you need to surround yourself with. And the final note that I'll share with you is never give up. Sometimes you're ahead, sometimes you're behind, but in the end, the race is with yourself. And there are going to be moments in your life when you are going to be up against the wall and you're going to feel like the world is against you. And they probably are. And the reality is that there are some really bad people out there and people who are going to root for you to fail. Know that those people are going to be there, but don't ask for their advice. Don't invest in them if they can't have a positive impact. And try to encourage them to maybe move away from that. Maybe they need someone to have a little come into Jesus meeting about their attitude. Maybe you can share this with them. And they say, well, are you talking about me? Well, I don't know. If the shoe fits, maybe we are. But never give up. There were setbacks. There were pivots. That's a word that kind of really came into focus this last year as businesses had to pivot during COVID-19. But there are going to be pivots in your life. You're not giving up by pivoting. You're finding a way through. And so those were the 10 keys to the kingdom that I wanted to share with you today. And now I'd like to open it up to see if there's any questions from anyone. Bueller, anyone? People don't actually study what they studied in college. I did. I studied communication with a broadcast emphasis with a minor in leadership. So it was a great political science minor that was a marriage of my love of broadcasting and political. I'm a political junkie. I love studying the presidents. I was watching the presidential debates since I was like 6 years old. My mom and dad thought I was weird. But I dreamed one day I could be a White House correspondent. And that part of the dream never happened. But I did get to land in television and get to do that. But I did actually study, and I actually used what I learned in college. So I encourage you to follow that path. But sometimes life takes a U-turn or a detour sometimes. So on a professional mistake, I would say be careful of the reply all. When you are responding to someone, especially when you're a little heated about something. Not everyone needs to know the reprimand you're about to give. And by the way, if you are upset, that is the worst time to send a phone call or an email. Cool down, count to 10, walk around the block, get that exercise in, calm down, and then make a decision. So be careful of the reply all. So, all right. Any other questions? All right. I was that amazing that we only had 2 questions. I'm just kidding. I want to thank you. If you want to follow me, you can on LinkedIn. We'll go to the next slide there. You look for this mug. I think I actually have a new picture on there, but you can find me there. It's Mitchell West, Regional Director. I accept everyone on LinkedIn. I think it's a great network. I do post a lot. If you're in advertising, marketing, public relations, I post almost every day an article or something in that field because I try to be a leader and a consultant in the field. So thank you. Thanks again for having me.